Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Fritz Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse podcast. I'm Josh Modell. This week, we've got a conversation between two old friends whose musical paths have converged and diverged over the past couple of decades, Jimbo Mathus and Andrew Bird. Though they've bounced around the musical map, each of these songwriters is best known for very different things. Bird is the whistling, violin-playing purveyor of stately indie rock, while Mathus was part of the 1990s swing revival with Squirrel Nut Zippers. But as you'll hear in this conversation, they influenced each other immensely as they came into and out of each other's lives. Before striking out on his own with Andrew Bird's Bowl of Fire and then as a solo artist, Bird actually played with Squirrel Nut Zippers, bringing his fiddle to a bunch of their records and occasionally to their live shows. Mathus also contributed to Bird's early records. But their roles in each other's music were always to add color to the other one's vision. They never wrote songs together. That changed a couple of years ago as they started work on a just-released album called These 13, on which you'll hear nothing but Mathus and Bird in their most stripped-down state: voices, guitar, and violin. The two wrote the songs together long distance and then recorded them in the same room. No fuss, no muss. Check out a little bit of Sweet Oblivion.
Forgot to get old, forgot to get old, forgot to get old, getting on time, forgot to get old, getting on time, forgot to get old. Hey. Walking to the other side, to the light.
It's a beautifully spare record that should find love from fans of either songwriter's vast catalog. Between them, they've got something like 40 albums. Bird and Mathus had hoped to take these songs on the road, but fate intervened. Still, you can see them perform live from Bird's home base of Ojai, California on April 11th via webcast. In the meantime, check out this conversation in which they talk about the process of making These 13, their shared reverence for Charley Patton, and Bird's days in a Depression-era Chicago apartment. Enjoy.
I'm Andrew Bird. This is my friend Jimbo Mathus. We've known each other for 25 years.
And where are you now, Andrew?
I'm in Ojai, California. So we got a little rain, so it's kind of more lush than usual.
I wish I was there.
Yeah? How's it in Mississippi?
It's a typical deep south. Rainy, cold, overcast, sort of different shades of gray and brown until it becomes pornographically green in the spring. I miss California, man. I sure have missed it. I know how nice it is there in Ojai. I don't blame you for wanting to be there.
Being in a place where every day you come outside and you're like, damn, it's beautiful.
Well, we met around 95. Is that right?
I think I graduated from college in 95. So it must have been 96. I had my first regular gig as a musician was at a Renaissance fair in southern Wisconsin. I was a serf. I was a fiddling serf. I had a blousey shirt and some drawstring pants and a floppy hat.
Wow.
And my gig was just to play with the dulcimer guy and the hurdy-gurdy guy and the flute maker. And the flute maker was this guy, Billy.
Billy Miller.
Billy Miller, and he was from North Carolina, and he got us a gig. Me and Evan Carawan, the dulcimer player, we had a trio, and we got a gig at Black Mountain Folk Fest. And we went down there without our outfits on. And I can't remember what our gig was. It really didn't matter because I went to see you guys. You guys were playing in like a gymnasium. On that campus there.
Squirrel Nut Zippers, yeah.
Squirrel Nut Zippers, yeah.
I remember the bunkhouse they had us put up in, yeah. It's like in a state park or something.
Yeah,
and you guys were just part of the general milieu of the scene.
We were barely employed. Our role was barely official, you know. I don't really remember who we played for. I remember there was a big barn dance, and I remember that the dancers on this big wooden floor, and every time everyone would jump and land at the same time, the whole thing would give. I'd never seen the Zippers before, and I was really taken with you guys. He just seemed like such an eccentric band. We're just a bunch of individuals up there somehow hung together as a band.
We were just starting to come out of the gate, really, at that time.
Yeah.
But we were well known in the Southeast, and that's about it. I believe we were just making some inroads touring up and down the East Coast.
I gave you a tape that I'd made of me playing some gypsy jazz. I think I gave it to you.
Probably
or
so.
Someone in the band. And I think in your van on the way up to Chicago, I understood you listened to that. You were having some personnel problems with your trumpet player and not making it to gigs. So you called me up and asked me to sit in at Double Door in Chicago.
That's probably our first gig in Chicago, I would think. And you did the trumpet parts on the fiddle.
Yeah.
We only had one record out then.
The Inevitable. I remember listening to that record in my first apartment in Chicago. I really loved that record. And then 2 weeks later, it seemed like pretty quickly after that, we were down in New Orleans.
We called you to come make hot.
Which was my first trip to the South, to New Orleans. I didn't really realize what another country New Orleans was or is. Where, music is a part of the everyday fabric of life.
Yeah, a lot of people, before they visit there, have kind of a preconceived idea about it. But especially as a musician visiting there, it's going to flip your wig, especially the first time you go and experience that. And so we were recording in the old mansion down there on Esplanade. It was Daniel Lanois, one of his creations, a 3-story mansion, or maybe 4 stories, one of the biggest houses in the whole city.
Yeah.
I think you were down for the whole episode, if I'm not mistaken. The whole session. It was only like a week.
And it was wild. I was 23, 22, fresh out of music school. I was chomping at the bit to get out of school. I just wanted to participate. I was just so ready for all the romance of the artistic life to
kick in,
kick in and sweep me away. The music school world was so cerebral and kind of dry, and I was ready for the romance. And then,
well, you got a big dose there.
Yeah,
got all your inoculations before you came. Yeah, because we were all self-taught and the opposite of a cerebral music school. Even though some of our references, were obscure, and you and I had the same sort of table we were seated at. We just were sitting on different sides of the table at that time, as far as me being self-taught. And I was a little older than you. And I was thinking today too, that's probably one of your first studio recording experiences of any magnitude.
I was in a band in college called Charlie Nobody, and we made a record or two, but nothing on that magnitude.
The chronology, you did Hot with us in 96. And then we did Music of Hair in 96. You may have had it started, but I think we kind of maybe finished it up, and you actually released it, I think, in 96.
Yeah.
But I maybe played some trombone on that, or maybe...
You did, man. We were so busy making records. And there was at least one every year, maybe 2.
And sometimes 3. I went back and looked today. Between 96 and 99, we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 records, if you count Music of Hair as being one that I contributed to. But I guess my thing about the studio is you hadn't navigated it on the level of like going to New Orleans, having a studio like Lanois. And so it kind of started cutting your teeth, I think, on those records. Just experiencing what a rock and roll band, was just full of character.
I think the Squirrel Nut Zippers are slightly misunderstood. I think your band would have done what it did with or without the swing trend. I think of them more as like a southeastern eccentric part of, more like in the same vein as like B-52s out of Athens or something like that. Just like starting out as house parties. You benefited maybe financially from the trend, but it doesn't do a service by associating with it.
I think it stood alone, just the type of music we were composing. And obviously adding you to the mix was a huge help on Hot. You were on quite a few, maybe half the record.
It was an education. I remember sitting there on the side of the stage before I would come on and just watching you guys throw yourselves like physically into the show. We're really going to knock them out. You know, that kind of physical energy. I remember you'd be playing guitar, hopping on one foot, like about to fall over for like the whole song. And
how much did you tour with us in those early days? I was trying to remember. We didn't have another fiddle player, so if you weren't there, we just didn't have fiddle. But I couldn't recall how much we were together on the road. But over those 4 years, we were in the studio a lot.
Yeah,
we made Thrills and Oh the Grandeur as well. You know,
and I think this album we made, These 13, is more of like a continuation of what you were getting into with Songs for Rosetta than any sort of Zippers album or Bull of Fire album. That was an album you made like a tribute to Charley Patton that benefited his daughter, Rosetta. That album has a little bit of everything, but These 13, this album we're putting out, the duo album, if you listen to those two records consecutively, you'd hear a thread in there more than anything of the hot jazz thing.
For sure.
And I think that's when you introduced me to Charley Patton, and he became my sort of touchstone for many years. Like after I'd finished an album of mine and I needed to kind of find my bass again, I would listen to Charley Patton.
It's so funny because it's the same way for me. And for people who don't know, he was a musician in the Mississippi Delta in the early 30s. He was kind of a larger than life character. His music was only on 78s, and it was recorded on a label that didn't have the greatest equipment. Some people would find it utterly unlistenable. It's almost like from another planet, with his dialect being so thick, his style being so idiosyncratic. I still go listen to him when I just need to reset.
When I'm making my own songs and my own albums, I get so internal. You know, I get so wrapped up in this world I've created. I sometimes don't know which way is up when I finish it. And then putting the whole album together, when that's over, usually you're gutted and you're confused and a little depressed, and you need to be inspired by something and remind yourself what good music is again. Not that what you've done is not good music. It's just that you're just spent and maybe a little down from the crashing from having spent so much energy on something, and you need to like remind yourself what's good. And then there's a couple things a couple songwriters and that I've always come back to just remind myself what I'm trying to do. And Charley Patton was one. Partly also, he reminds me that I don't have to write every melody in an 8-bar phrase, or I don't have to go through these same patterns of chords that kind of the physical memory keeps bringing me back to.
I don't know how many sides he recorded, 30, maybe 30, quite a few. But I mean, they're all basically just modal music. Like there's really no changes to speak of. He kind of insinuates the 1 and the 4 sometimes. But the power, the diversity he was able to bring, the drive, it just seemed to be never-ending source of inspiration. And so rhythmically driving, you know, is something that I get off. And it's just one man.
And he's working with so little. It reminds me that, you know, someone might say, oh, you can do this chord inversion and it's inner voicings, and like, who cares? It doesn't matter. What's important is the performance, how you deliver it. It could all be over one chord.
Yeah.
If you're really inhabited by the music, it'll be compelling.
It's such a pure vein of music. But,
Yeah.
for the average listener, they may hear it and just go, this is unlistenable,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but
to us,
there's
it's our favorite thing.
the things that I can't quite hear or I misunderstand have been seeds for new songs for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I think he's saying something, and then what he's actually saying is even more fascinating than your misunderstanding. Like, we were doing Elder Green when you were out here, and
The song Elder Green, yeah.
Elder Green, yeah,
Mhm.
about this deacon that goes down to some congregation in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
There was that line about getting drunk off bottle and bone. Is that right? Bottle and bond.
Bonded liquor.
I always thought he was saying bottle and bone. You're saying, no, it's bond liquor. So, you're pulled in also by the archaic or
language.
Things that are no longer in the vernacular anymore, but you're pulled in by the folklore of it.
He was very bard-like in that way. He reported on events that were important to his region, that his listener would understand. That's something I take away from him. And also just the misunderstanding of the lyrics. That's where I wrote the song, Who'll Sop My Gravy When I'm Dead and Gone. That's something I misunderstood him saying. And,
what did he actually say?
I thought he was saying that. And then on the closer consideration, he wasn't. And I was like, great, because I just said it,
Right.
And it's a great Southern. It's one of my most popular songs in the Deep South, because it, in the same way his songs would speak to his audience, that song speaks to my Deep South audience very well.
The one we put on the end of this record, Three White Horses, is from a misunderstanding of a Charley Patton tune. The night after my grandmother McCabe died, I played the double door in Chicago. This is a long time ago, and I covered the Charley Patton tune. You're gonna need somebody when you come to die. And that was sort of the seed for Three White Horses.
I remember when I first heard you singing that, I was like, Charley Patton strikes again.
There's probably a lot of examples in both of our
now that I'm sitting here talking to you about it, of course, something like the High John that we did on there on these 13, that's Patton inspired. Nothing particularly other than his little hoodoo references and stuff. I got that idea more from Petey Wheatstraw. Just that way that I move the shape of the the chord on the guitar. It's his shape. It's a weird pattern that he does. When I teach guitar, it's the first thing I show people and it just completely flips their wig to just show them that rocking back and forth on the one.
That boom, dun, dun,
yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. There's two notes that you just pull off.
Yeah, you did that on Salt My Gravy. A lot of them.
And pretty much everything I do that's got that shape in it has got that feel to it. And it was interesting because you and I were both at that point. I guess you had learned a lot in college, but there was a lot you wanted that you still needed to learn, not just about your technique. Because when I met you, your technique was fully formed. Like, I mean, I've never heard you play a wrong note.
But would you? We were on opposite paths of technique. I had already achieved more technique than I could ever want or need, and we met somewhere in between where I was trying to unlearn a lot of things too,
and I was trying to learn a lot of things, and mostly just from ear. We would share music, you and I, back and forth. So we were kind of getting our inspiration from a lot of the same things during those 3 and 4 years. We were listening to when you would come to visit me. That was most of our time together that wasn't in the studio, was when you would visit the farm in North Carolina, or I would visit you in Chicago, even though we were usually working on a show. Like I did Old Town School with you one time.
Old Town School and Shubas, and
I did some gigs with you when you first started kind of doing your thing up there, right? Even before Bowl of Fire. I would hang out at your apartment, and it was exactly what I imagined Chicago should have been, from reading like The Jungle or something.
Right. I was living in a 1920s apartment hotel, like a bachelor hotel, like a transient's welcome kind of place that happened to be mostly a retired Jesuit priests and nuns.
Yeah, it was exactly what I hoped it would be.
You came up to visit me that first time in Chicago. Man, I was just beside myself.
It was a great experience. I purposefully only brought like clothes from the 1940s.
There was like a Okie scene too around the Green Mill in Uptown. It goes back to the Depression era, like. So there was like the Lakeside Lounge, and I'm sure I took you there, and the Green Mill, and I would go to the Green Mill in the late mornings and play the jukebox.
It was a really trapped in amber type of deal,
It was, yeah, and a lot of mysteriousness between that and New Orleans and Efland, and then Clarksdale, where I came to your daughter's christening, and that was an experience because I was 25, 26, and having pulled pork and Michelob at 11 in the morning. And then I remember the same day, it's like 3 or 4 in the morning at Hobson's Commissary. I'm just flattened. I don't know. I even took a nap. I'm just flattened. Like, how do these people have the fortitude to keep partying like this? Like, there was like this 85-year-old guy dancing at the commissary at 3 or 4 in the morning.
Clarksdale, Mississippi. That's the home of Muddy Waters, and John Lee Hooker, and all the greats. So it's a powerful place. You can feed off of that energy in a way. But yeah, that was quite an education that you got there, Andrew.
It was. I wonder what I would have found or wouldn't have found if I hadn't met you. It definitely kept me grounded, being exposed to your world in a way. As a songwriter, kept my feet on the ground. I think I would have maybe gone into more composed kind of thinky stuff.
All your songs have a drive. They have a heavy stance in folk blues. I mean, even though to hear it, you might not understand the average listener, but I can hear it, just the folk simplicity that you're able to achieve, even with some complex music and complex ideas and stuff, But that's basically what we did for the first 4 years that we knew each other.
Yeah. So until we made this album, we never really wrote songs together at this level.
No. We never even discussed it.
I would come and play the fiddle part on like The Ghost of Stephen Foster. I would focus on like, what can I bring to this song as a fiddle player? But as two songwriters that are used to working alone, it was a kind of a revelation. We haven't really talked about this, but that tradition of the songwriting teams, the lone gun singer-songwriter, that tradition that Dylan was kind of the beginning of, and Joni Mitchell, and but going back to the Brill Building and Tin Pan Alley, the lone songwriter is an exception to the rule. It's usually two people, bouncing ideas back and forth. Usually it's music and lyrics, but
traditionally in the Tin Pan Alley, but I'm sure that there was tons of it's kind of presented that way. One would be the music person, one would be the lyric person.
Yeah, but I totally get now the clarity that comes with someone sending you an idea, and you hearing it with fresh ears and saying, I know what the answer to this question is. Mostly you were feeding me parts of songs. And not every song I reacted to, but the ones that I did, I would immediately get to work. And within like an hour, I would have something. Whereas with your own songs, you're chipping away for months and months, and you're dealing with, within one song, you've got like 4 different versions of yourself and you're not quite sure what you're trying to say anymore.
Going into the project, I really wasn't sure what you wanted to do. And so I just started throwing stuff at you,
Mhm.
and then you're like, yes, this, not this. Of course, I don't have any ego involved in my songs. Like, if you like it or if you didn't, didn't particularly care. And as we started kind of piecing it together, I started seeing your vision, and then I started being able to just feed you some nice things and just leave the rest of I might have had another idea for Encircle My Love or Dig Up the Hatchet, but I just didn't give it to you, because I liked what you were coming up with better,
Right.
And so we were sort of able to finish the thought in a fuller way, more satisfying way to me as a songwriter, to hear my own ideas coming back. It's much more satisfying to me just to wait on your response to what I got sent you.
Right.
2 or 3 days later, I would get this wonderful bridge or some more verses or a whole different take on it. Like even the Dig Up the Hatchet thing for me, when I envisioned it, actually, I think I only just had the title, maybe just a few lines, but I envisioned it more of a violent scenario, with couples fighting or people fighting and just rehashing the same negativity, when you go for the low blow, but you were actually able to put a very more universal spin on that. It kept the idea of the song, but you were able to really spread that idea out in a cool way. I would have never thought of that. And the list goes on and on, through these 13. I mean, almost every single one is a major collaboration, especially considering you and I have never done that before. I've never written with another writer, ever. And
I really haven't.
I needed to. Did you do that with the Handsome Family, or did you pretty much just take their songs
I just took their songs and maybe mess with the melodies, and they were on my list of I would either go to Charley Patton or the Handsome Family when I was in between projects, just to kind of reset. Rennie's lyrics would just kind of remind me what to go for as far as lyricism and
he's great.
The song that I think is easiest to explain this back and forth we did was Poor Lost Souls, where it was almost a complete song. You actually did a version of it. That's a classic, songwriter observing the world as you see it. You're in downtown Hollywood, on the Walk of Fame, and you're probably looking down and seeing the star of Sammy Davis Jr., then looking up Vine and seeing the Hollywood sign. So you're setting your place. And then you came up with this beautiful line: look down and see the stars, look up and see the gold, which I think is just right up there with just some of the best songwriting. It's full of possibility of metaphor and but you still get it. You get that you're, where you are. You look, the stars on the ground, which is not where stars are supposed to be.
Right. And gold is supposed to be in the ground.
Yeah. And then you look and you see this total desolation around you of homeless population in one of the more prosperous cities in the world. And you coming from rural northern Mississippi, where it's not a particularly prosperous place, but yet people don't seem to be as destitute as this,
It's not on full display here. It's not as obvious as it is in a place like LA. And then you look around, and see these poor lost souls. It was the homelessness that inspired it, but as I've gotten to know LA more, the poor lost souls aren't necessarily just the poor people. There's people that have plenty of money in LA that are pretty lost.
Oh yeah.
But that came later.
Yeah. I heard that and I thought, here's your assessment of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
My reality is I actually live here, and I'm driving my kid to school every day through homeless encampments day after day and seeing it and trying to always be in a constant state of not shutting down to it.
Empathy.
I wrote a verse that talks about the need for people to stay awake to it and not lose their empathy, even though they're being desensitized to it.
Absolutely. I would have never thought of bringing it to that side. I guess I couldn't as a writer. I couldn't see your side until you've completed the song. I think it'll open up some more eyes, and just to kind of get back down to the nerve of living in LA, seeing all that. It could be anywhere though, but it's just the Hollywood thing. It's in most people's mind.
All over the world, people ask me about it. Like, I visited LA and then I saw this thing. It was so shocking. They want answers. Why is this happening?
Want answers.
Yeah.
I think, you'll see that in any town, but that's the cool thing about folk music and music like this. It's a simple music, what we did on these 13. It's not complex, but it talks about a universal condition, and I just think anybody listening to that, it's going to really reset them a little bit and go, you know what, I need to check myself. And if nothing else, maybe there's something I can do to help. Maybe I can just change my own attitude. Maybe I can actually help, or maybe I can feel something again. If that was the outcome of that song, it was people were able to actually just feel something for someone else again. Is not trying to sound grim, but that's what that song is all about, is getting outside yourself and sympathize.
With Beat Still My Heart, which is all yours. You just sent that to me and I didn't have anything to add to it. I just wanted to sing it. I wish I wrote songs that open my voice up like that one. Sometimes you write yourself into a corner and it's you haven't written something that's easy to sing.
That one's just a cool singable melody, but with some interesting twists and turns. I tried to sing it. I really never could sing it. I couldn't pull it off. I'm not sure why. I tried to demo it a few times and it just fell flat, So.
I don't know. I would beg to differ. I think a lot of your demos you send me are really great field recordings, just to have so much charm.
Thanks.
with this album, reflecting on it now, it's like, and something I wanted to do with you is really strip it back, keep it simple, so that people can really hear the subtle feel things that you do that are kind of part of a lost vernacular. I just wanted to expose those things wherever the tree has taken us since the early 20th century. A lot of those little things have been ironed out and lost. And you still have them. You've internalized them and learned them. And I think I wanted to do a project where those would be front and center, and also when it would come time to do like a fiddle solo, it's not about, this is not a bluegrass record. We're not trying to win any competitions here. It's just really simple phrasing, but the way you kind of, both vocally or with the instrument, like the way you go over the bar line or the way you finish out that phrase. You could say that some of the lines I'm playing on the fiddle are cliche, like country music things, but there's so many different ways to express the same idea,
And you can put the soul in there on the simple songs like we had, it's like almost puts it less on the notes and more on the feeling that you're putting out in the song, You're trying to answer the singer. We only recorded this like right before the pandemic and everything broke. And just the simple fact that we were just two humans, in a room set around a microphone. There's no other overdubs in it. And that was part of your concept. And I thank you for giving me the chance to present these songs, to record these with you, and to let people hear me the way I am without hidden behind anything else. You can feel us together in the air and on the microphone, in the room, breathing the same air. And you can't even do that now, and I think people listening to these 13 maybe be able to partake in that human emotion and musical moments that we just laid down one or two takes and that's it, so it's just, it's kind of even rarer now. We wouldn't be able to do it now, and I don't know when we would have done it if our timing hadn't been what it was. So I think people will get a emotional connection to it simply for just, we're there together, breathing the same air, breathing the same emotions. And that's more important than anything on the record as far as I'm concerned. I look forward to when we can go perform those, if and when we can, but if not, they're there forever. And I'm mighty proud of the record, Andrew.
Yeah, me too.
I really am, man. And
it was
look forward to more.
I miss it. I'm writing the next batch of songs for my next record, and kind of lost in the navel gazing stage of that. I kind of missed the.
You missed the help,
the help, the clarity. It's been hard to kind of restart that engine, but we'll do it.
We'll do it, man. Yeah, I'm confident about that. As soon as the world's ready for it, we'll come. But at least now we can bring some comfort to the bereaved and consolation to the sick and shut in. I was saving that one for the very end.
Good to see you, Jimbo.
Love you, Bird.
Thanks.
See you later, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse podcast, and thanks to Andrew Bird and Jimbo Mathus for chatting. Their record, These 13, is available now. If you liked what you heard, be sure and subscribe to the Talkhouse podcast wherever you like to listen, and check us out on all your favorite social media channels. This episode was produced by Kevin O'Connell, and the Talkhouse theme was composed and performed by The Range. See you next week.